As everyone knows, the country of Canada has treated the United States very unfairly for decades.
Canada and the US have one of the world's most integrated, mutually beneficial trading relationships. Canada is consistently one of the top export markets for US goods and services, supporting millions of US jobs, which is not evidence of one-sided, unfair treatment.
Now, things are turning around for the USA, and fast.
This is a vague political assertion, not a verifiable economic claim. No specific metric, GDP, jobs, trade balance is cited, and current trade tensions with Canada and tariff threats are creating uncertainty rather than clearly turning around conditions in a measurable way.
But imagine, Canada is building a massive bridge between Ontario and Michigan.
The Gordie Howe International Bridge between Windsor, Ontario and Detroit, Michigan is indeed a large binational infrastructure project led by the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, a Canadian Crown corporation, and Michigan partners.
They own both the Canada and the United States side.
The agreement for the Gordie Howe International Bridge explicitly states it will be publicly owned jointly by Canada and Michigan, not solely by Canada. The US side is not owned by Canada alone.
And of course, built it with virtually no US content.
The Obama-era waiver allowed the bridge project to use either Canadian or American iron and steel, not to exclude US content. Reporting notes US suppliers are eligible, and the claim of virtually no US content is unsupported.
President Barack Hussein Obama stupidly gave them a waiver so they could get around the Buy American Act and not use any American products, including our steel.
In 2012, the Obama administration granted a narrow exemption from U.S. Buy American procurement rules because Canada is paying almost the entire upfront cost, and the waiver explicitly permits use of both Canadian and American steel. It does not ban U.S. products.
Now the Canadian government expects me, as President of the United States, to permit them to just take advantage of America.
Canada's financing of the bridge includes covering the cost of the U.S. port of entry and related infrastructure to be repaid over time via tolls. This structure means Canada is fronting money to improve U.S. infrastructure, not taking advantage of the U.S.
What does the United States of America get? Absolutely nothing.
The U.S. gets a new, modern border crossing that relieves congestion at the aging Ambassador Bridge, enhances security, and facilitates massive cross-border trade flows. Canadian financing does not erase the substantial economic and logistical benefits to U.S. manufacturers, truckers, and workers.
Ontario won't even put U.S. spirits, beverages, and other alcoholic products on their shelves. They are absolutely prohibited from doing so.
Ontario's liquor retailer, LCBO, has historically stocked U.S. alcohol. A recent political directive temporarily removed U.S. alcohol from shelves in retaliation for Trump-era tariffs, but the inventory includes tens of millions of dollars of U.S. products held in storage, showing they are not absolutely prohibited in general, and the situation is a political tit-for-tat, not a long-standing ban.
And now, on top of everything else, Prime Minister Carney wants to make a deal with China, which will eat Canada alive. We'll just get the leftovers. I don't think so.
Prime Minister Mark Carney has publicly stated that Canada has no intention of pursuing a full free trade agreement with China. Instead, Ottawa has struck a narrow tariff reduction deal that allows a capped number of Chinese electric vehicles into Canada at a 6.1% most favoured nation tariff, down from the prior 100% punitive duty, in exchange for major cuts to Chinese tariffs on Canadian canola and other farm products, making it harder to argue that Canada is being eaten alive or turning into a wide-open back door for Chinese goods.
The first thing China will do is terminate all ice hockey being played in Canada and permanently eliminate the Stanley Cup.
The Stanley Cup is controlled by the NHL and North American hockey institutions, not by the Chinese government. Moreover, China has invested in growing hockey domestically and in NHL-linked projects in Asia, making the idea that Beijing would terminate Canadian hockey or abolish the Stanley Cup both legally impossible and contradicted by their actual behaviour.
The tariffs Canada charges us for our dairy products have for many years been unacceptable, putting our farmers at great financial risk.
Canada does maintain high over-quota tariffs on certain dairy imports, but these apply only above agreed tariff rate quotas under USMCA. Within the quotas, U.S. dairy exports enter on favourable terms, and U.S. exports to Canada are worth around $1 billion annually, so the situation is more complex than a blanket claim that tariffs put farmers at great financial risk.
I will not allow this bridge to open until the United States is fully compensated for everything we have given them.
Reporting shows Canada is paying the full upfront cost of the Gordie Howe Bridge, including U.S. customs facilities, with cost recovery via tolls. The premise that the U.S. has given Canada the bridge or its financing is factually backwards.
And also, importantly, Canada treats the United States with the fairness and respect that we deserve.
Existing agreements like USMCA already set out reciprocal obligations and dispute mechanisms. Disputes over dairy or EV tariffs are being handled through those legal channels rather than through unilateral infrastructure threats, which undercuts the framing that Canada is uniquely disrespectful and the US has no recourse.
We will start negotiations immediately.
Trade and project negotiations around the Gordie Howe Bridge and Canada-US economic relations have been ongoing for years through formal channels. Presenting negotiations as something that begin only at Trump's personal command ignores the established binational governance framework already in place.
With all that we have given them, we should own, perhaps, at least one half of this asset.
The crossing is already structured to be jointly and publicly owned by Canada and the state of Michigan, with cost recovery arrangements reflecting Canada's larger financial contribution, demanding half ownership, as if the US currently gets none, misrepresents the existing binational ownership framework.
The revenues generated because of the US market will be astronomical. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump.
While increased capacity is expected to boost cross-border trade, projections by Canadian and US authorities emphasize long-term trade facilitation and redundancy, not astronomical profits. In any case, those revenues are meant to recover construction costs and maintain the crossing, not serve as a windfall gifted to Canada alone.